Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today we're tackling prison officer interviews, and we've got some awesome RoleCatcher resources to help us out.
Yeah, they've got it all. Career guides, interview guides, even AI insights.
It's going to be good. So, RoleCatcher, by the way.
Oh yeah, for anyone listening who hasn't heard of them.
Right. It's this platform that helps people navigate their careers. Their AI features can really help you tailor applications and get feedback for specific roles, like, well, the one we're talking about today.
Prison officer.
Exactly. But before we get into all that good stuff, let's set the stage. What exactly does a prison officer do?
Well, sometimes they're called correctional officers too, by the way.
Right. Good point.
But either way, think of it like wearing two hats.
Okay, I like that.
One hat is all about security, right? Keeping the prison safe and secure. But the other hat, that's about rehabilitation, supporting inmates to turn their lives around.
Yeah, that's what the RoleCatcher guide emphasized too.
It's a tough balance, for sure.
It is. The guide actually mentioned how important rehabilitation programs are these days.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
a huge trend. And they talked about all sorts of programs, from education to job training,
Yeah.
basically giving inmates the tools to reintegrate into society.
Exactly. See, that's the kind of detail that can impress an interviewer, showing them you understand the bigger picture, the why behind the job.
So, okay, we've got the big picture. Now, how can RoleCatcher's AI actually help someone get the job?
So you can upload your CV or resume, right?
Okay.
And their AI analyzes it against actual job descriptions for prison officer roles. It gives you a score, tells you where you're strong and where you might need to improve.
So it's like a personal career coach, zeroing in on what you need to do to stand out.
Pretty much.
Love that. Now, let's say you use RoleCatcher,
Mhm.
polished your application, and boom, you landed an interview.
Nice.
What kind of questions should you be ready for?
Well, they're going to want to know you can handle the job, right? So they'll probably ask something like, can you tell me about your experience working in a correctional facility?
I bet that one throws people off, especially if they haven't actually worked in corrections before.
You're right. But they're not always looking for direct experience. Think transferable skills, like maybe you've worked security or customer service.
Or even just volunteered somewhere.
Exactly. Anything where you had to stay calm under pressure, resolve conflicts, communicate clearly in a tough situation. Even coaching a sports team could be relevant.
So it's all about showing them how your experience, even if it's not directly in corrections, has prepared you for this kind of role.
Yeah, and don't worry if you don't have a ton of formal education.
Right. The guide said most prison officer jobs just require a high school diploma or equivalent.
Yeah. What matters is how you frame your skills. And guess what? RoleCatcher's AI can help with that too.
No way. Tell me more.
So after the initial analysis, you can actually practice answering common interview questions, and the AI gives you feedback.
Whoa, it's like a mock interview with a virtual expert.
Right. It's awesome.
So let's dive into some of those common questions then, see how we can use RoleCatcher's insights to really nail the answers.
All right, let's start with a tough one. How do you handle difficult or challenging situations with inmates?
Ooh, yeah. Every prison officer needs to know how to de-escalate, right?
Absolutely. But you can't just say, I'm good at de-escalating. You got to give them more.
So what would be a good answer then?
Well, the guide actually mentions a specific technique called, what was it, verbal judo, I think?
Oh yeah, verbal judo.
It's about using your words to redirect behavior, resolve conflict peacefully.
Interesting.
They also talked about staying calm, assertive, never letting your emotions take over.
That's key.
Oh, and you know what else?
What?
Instead of just saying you're good at de-escalation, give them an example, like a time you used verbal judo or something similar in the past.
Oh, I see. Maybe a time you dealt with a difficult customer.
Yeah, perfect. You're not just talking about a skill, you're showing them you can apply it. And, be ready for follow-up questions too, like, can you give me a specific example from working with inmates?
Oh, good point. They're going to want to dig deeper.
Always.
All right, well, how about this one? How do you ensure the safety and security of staff and inmates within the facility?
Ah, that's a classic. Here you got to show them you understand the procedures, why those rules are there.
Right, not just I'll follow the rules.
Exactly. You need to demonstrate you get it.
Well, RoleCatcher's guide actually broke down some of those key security protocols.
Oh, it did.
Stuff like regular inmate counts, thorough searches, controlled movement within the facility.
Right, the basics.
But it's about understanding why those things are important.
Absolutely.
So you could say something like, I know that regular inmate counts are crucial to make sure everyone's accounted for. I'd conduct those counts carefully, following the procedures to make sure they're accurate. You're not just saying a fact, You're showing you understand the purpose.
And they'll probably ask follow-up questions there too, like, what would you do if you noticed a discrepancy during a count?
Oh, good one. So you got to be ready to problem solve on the spot.
Yep. Stay calm under pressure. Show them you can think on your feet.
Okay, I'm ready. What else have you got?
Let's try this one. How do you handle situations where an inmate may be experiencing mental health issues?
Ooh, that's a sensitive one.
It is. And it's becoming more and more important. The guide really emphasized sensitivity and collaboration with mental health professionals.
Yeah, I can see why.
You need to show you can recognize signs of distress. You know what the appropriate steps are.
So active listening is important.
Yeah.
And being non-judgmental.
Huge. And the guide actually mentions how important clear communication is.
Makes sense.
You got to let the inmate know you're there to help. Encourage them to talk about what they're going through.
And maybe offer to connect them with mental health staff.
Exactly. And document the interaction, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Remember, you're not the mental health expert, but you are expected to show compassion, willingness to help, and be ready for those tough follow-ups. Like, what would you do if an inmate was suicidal?
Yikes. Yeah.
That's where knowing the facility's procedures for mental health emergencies is super important.
Yeah. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it.
Well, good thing we're prepping, right?
Right. Preparation is key.
Now, how about this one? How do you maintain positive relationships with inmates while also enforcing rules and regulations?
That's tricky. Finding that balance between being firm and respectful.
It is. The guide talks about setting clear boundaries. You're not there to be their friend. You're there to uphold the rules and keep everyone safe.
But you can still treat them with respect.
Absolutely. And you can show that in how you talk about communicating with inmates.
Like, always address them respectfully. Use their last names.
Yep, things like that.
And be prepared to give an example of how you'd handle a situation where an inmate was breaking a rule.
Exactly. Like if an inmate was talking back, refusing to follow instructions, what would you do?
Right. I'd stay calm, assertive, clearly explain the consequences.
Yeah.
Give him a chance to comply before taking disciplinary action.
Perfect. You're firm but fair.
Got it.
And they might ask, what's your approach to dealing with an inmate who is consistently disrespectful?
Ah, okay. So be ready to talk about how you handle those ongoing behavior issues.
Exactly.
Wow, we've covered so much already.
We have.
And remember, everyone, RoleCatcher has tons of resources to help you prep for these questions. Their AI can even score your practice answers and give you feedback.
It's such a great tool. Don't underestimate the power of preparation.
All right, coming up next, we'll be diving into even more challenging interview questions and seeing how RoleCatcher can help you craft those winning responses.
Okay, ready for round 2. Let's dig into some more of those interview questions that really test your ability to think on your feet. You know, those curveball questions.
Hit me with it. I'm ready for a challenge.
All right, how about this one? Can you describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision related to the safety and security of a facility?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's not just about knowing the rules, right? It's about judgment.
Exactly. They want to see your problem-solving skills, how you prioritize safety, even under pressure.
So what kind of example would work here? Something from a previous security role, maybe?
Not necessarily. Think broader. Maybe you worked retail and had to deal with a shoplifting incident, or maybe even something totally unrelated to work.
Like what?
Like maybe you witnessed a car accident and had to take charge of the situation, make sure everyone was safe.
I see. So it's really about highlighting how you assess the risks, made a tough call, and communicated effectively.
You got it. And remember what the RoleCatcher guide said about staying calm and collected?
Oh, yeah. They even talked about the STAR method for answering these kinds of behavioral questions.
The STAR method.
Yeah. Situation, task, action, result. It's a great framework to structure your answer and make sure you hit all the key points.
That's a great tip for our listeners. Using a structured approach can definitely help you stay on track and give a clear and concise answer. Now, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about those situations where an inmate just refuses to cooperate. You know, those times when you give an instruction and they just won't.
Right. We talked about de-escalation techniques, but what if verbal judo doesn't work? What if the situation escalates?
That's where your knowledge of the facility's use of force continuum comes into play. The guide actually had a whole section on this.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It talked about the steps you can take to control the situation, starting with verbal commands and progressing to physical restraint, if absolutely necessary.
Exactly. But you always want to emphasize that using force is a last resort.
Right, after you've exhausted all other options.
And you need to be able to articulate why you chose a particular course of action, show that your actions were proportionate to the threat.
They might even ask you point blank, have you ever had to use force to subdue an inmate? And if so, describe the situation.
That's a tough one, but honesty and transparency are key, while also highlighting your commitment to using force only when absolutely necessary.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about a situation where an inmate is being threatened or bullied by other inmates? How do you handle that?
This one goes beyond just stopping the immediate threat. It's about fostering a culture of respect, zero tolerance for that kind of behavior.
Right, so it's not just about breaking up a fight, it's about preventing it from happening in the first place.
Exactly. The RoleCatcher Guide talked about proactive measures like building rapport with inmates, observing their interactions, being aware of any potential power dynamics or gang affiliations that might be at play.
So you could say something like, I would make it a priority to get to know the inmates I'm supervising. Learn their names, their backgrounds, any vulnerabilities they might have. This would help me identify potential targets for bullying and intervene before things escalate.
That's a great example. And don't forget about confidentiality.
Right, you can't always divulge specifics.
But you can talk about your general approach to building trust with inmates so they feel comfortable coming to you if they have a problem.
And always report any incidents according to the facility's procedures.
Absolutely, even if it has to be done anonymously. Now, let's shift gears again and talk about medical situations. What happens when an inmate needs medical attention?
That seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
You follow the protocol, work with the medical staff. What else is there to it?
It's not just about blindly following procedures. It's about showing initiative, being an advocate for that inmate's well-being. Remember, you're often their first line of defense when it comes to health. You see them every day, so you might be the first one to notice if something's wrong.
So you could talk about a time when you noticed an inmate was sick, even if they didn't report it themselves.
Exactly. Or maybe you had to cut through some red tape to make sure an inmate got the timely care they needed.
The guide had a great example of this. An officer noticed an inmate was struggling to breathe and immediately called for medical help, potentially saved the inmate's life. It just shows how being observant and proactive can really make a difference.
It's a powerful reminder that your actions can have a huge impact on the lives of the inmates you're responsible for. Now let's tackle another big one, contraband.
Ah, yes, contraband. I have a feeling this is a topic they'll definitely ask about. What kind of questions should I be ready for?
They might ask something like, what are some common ways inmates try to sneak contraband into the facility? Or what steps would you take to prevent it?
This is where knowing your security procedures and having a keen eye for detail really comes in handy.
You got it. Thorough searches are essential, not just of the inmates themselves, but their cells, common areas, any packages or mail coming into the facility.
It's not just about finding this stuff, though, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding why they're trying to smuggle it in.
That's a great point. Sometimes it's about meeting basic needs, like wanting extra food or hygiene items. Other times it's about keeping in touch with the outside world, like sneaking in cell phones or letters. And then there are those who are trying to gain power or control within the prison hierarchy.
So understanding those motivations can help you be more effective at stopping contraband from coming in.
Exactly. It's not just about catching them in the act, it's about making them not even want to try. Now, let's move on to a slightly different but equally important topic, maintaining boundaries.
Ah, yes, boundaries. That seems tricky. How do you balance being professional and approachable without getting too close?
It's about setting clear expectations from day one. The RoleCatcher Guide emphasized the importance of treating all inmates with respect, but also keeping a professional distance.
They use the phrase emotional detachment. It's not about being cold or heartless, but protecting yourself from becoming too emotionally invested in their lives.
Exactly. It's a tough job, but it's important to remember you are there to do a job, and that job is to maintain order and security. You're not their friend or therapist.
So how do you explain that in an interview? What kind of questions should I expect about boundaries?
They might ask something like, how would you handle an inmate who tries to confide in you about personal problems? Or, what would you do if an inmate tried to give you a gift?
Those are good questions. I'd want to show empathy, but also stand my ground.
It's a balancing act, for sure. You could say something like, I would listen to their concerns and offer words of encouragement, but I would also make it clear that I'm not a counselor. I can't give personal advice. I would encourage them to seek support from the mental health professionals in the facility.
And as for the gift, I'd politely decline, explaining that it's against policy to accept gifts from inmates.
Right. You could reiterate that your main focus is on maintaining a safe and secure environment for everyone, and that accepting gifts could jeopardize that.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. The RoleCatcher Guide is truly a goldmine of information. It really helps you prepare for those tough interview questions.
It really does. It's an invaluable tool for anyone serious about this career.
Absolutely. All right, coming up next, we're shifting gears again and exploring the exciting career path that lies ahead for prison officers. Stick around. Okay, so we've talked about what the job is, prep for some tough interview questions, and now let's talk about what happens after you land the job.
Right, the career path. What's next? What can you look forward to?
The RoleCatcher Guide actually lays out a pretty clear progression.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it starts with entry level, then you move up to junior officer, then senior officer.
Makes sense.
From there, you can become a supervisor, then a manager, and ultimately you could even become chief prison officer.
Wow, from the ground floor to running the whole place. That's pretty cool.
It is. But let's take it step by step. What can someone expect at each stage?
Well, at the entry level, it's really about learning the ropes, assisting the senior officers, doing security checks, keeping an eye on the inmates, basically proving yourself.
Showing you're reliable, committed to the job.
Exactly. You're gaining that hands-on experience, building a foundation.
Okay, then you move up to junior and senior officer. That's where you start taking on more responsibility, right?
You're supervising inmates directly, enforcing those security protocols, maybe even training new recruits. The guide actually had these cool profiles of officers at different career stages.
Oh yeah, I like those.
Really helps you visualize what each role is like.
Totally. So it's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about finding your niche within the field, too.
Exactly. Like they had this one senior officer who specialized in conflict resolution.
Oh, right. And he mentored other officers on de-escalation techniques.
Right. Sharing his expertise. Now, what about those who want to aim even higher? Supervisor, manager, those are big roles.
Yeah, what did that involve?
Well, you're not just managing individuals anymore. You're overseeing entire teams.
Wow, that's a lot.
You're developing policies, managing budgets, making sure the whole facility runs smoothly.
So you need some serious leadership skills at that level.
Oh, absolutely. Strong communication, strategic thinking, all of that becomes even more important.
It sounds like you'd be juggling a lot of different responsibilities.
For sure. The guide even mentioned that a lot of officers at that level end up going back to school.
Really? For what kind of degrees?
Things like criminal justice, public administration, anything to boost those leadership and management skills.
Makes sense. And it shows that commitment to professional development.
Which is super important. The guide emphasized continuous learning throughout your career. Staying updated on trends, going to workshops, getting those relevant certifications.
Speaking of certifications, are there any that are particularly valuable for prison officers? Ones that can really help you get ahead?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The guide mentioned a few. Well, correctional officer certification is pretty much a must-have if you're serious about advancing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then there's first aid and CPR, shows you're prepared for emergencies. Crisis intervention training is huge, too, especially with the increasing focus on mental health.
Right, that equips you to handle those really tough situations.
Exactly. And then, depending on your interests, you could look into firearms training or defensive tactics training.
Yeah, those are more specialized, right?
Right, especially if you're thinking about security or tactical response roles.
It's amazing how those certifications not only make your resume look good, but also make you a better, more well-rounded officer.
Totally. It shows you're dedicated to your profession, constantly learning and growing.
So, for anyone listening who's just starting out on this path, what's your best piece of advice?
That's a good one. I guess I'd say embrace the challenges, never stop learning, and always try to make a positive impact on the lives of those inmates under your care. It's more than just a job, it's a chance to make a difference.
That's a great way to put it. And of course, we have to mention RoleCatcher again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Their AI tools, career guides, all of that, it can really give you an edge.
For sure. It's an incredible resource for anyone serious about this career.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of prison officers.
Hope everyone found it helpful.
We covered a lot of ground, from what the job entails to how to ace that interview, and even what your future career might look like.
It's a challenging but rewarding career, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, to everyone out there who's considering this path, good luck. With the right preparation and that passion for justice, you can build an amazing career in corrections. Thanks for listening.